Today's workshop is going to be on dialogue, if that wasn't already apparent. This is Lowriders. If you're new, I do workshops online, all free. I also do workshops in person, and I put out videos on TikTok and Instagram and also on here that just really discusses everything and anything about screenwriting as well as anything in proximity to writing in general. And I'm starting to do these whiteboards that are long and they take up a lot of time in terms of planning them out and just doing them right. So there's definitely going to be more of these in the future. Just be patient with me. And today we're just going to talk about dialogue. And the one thing I want to make clear is that there are videos that tell you about like what good dialogue is and what bad dialogue is and why one version of dialogue works and why one doesn't. But there's not really like a workshop where we're going to spend like probably an hour or more than that really discussing the ins and outs of dialogue, how you can actually implement it and how to approach it in your screenplay, and what are the processes in which to improve your dialogue throughout like revisions and rewrites and overall in the long term. So we're going to actually have like practical methods or you're going to see really practical ways to implement it. I did script this one out. Usually the workshops, I kind of have an idea, maybe take some notes, but this one I am kind of sticking to a script, and because otherwise I don't want to ramble too much or go into so many tangents that it just becomes very convoluted, because writing dialogue can really be that way. So we're just going to get really straight into it. And again, this is it's just a continuous workshop. It's probably going to be over an hour long, maybe even 2 hours, who knows. And so pause it, rewind it, take screenshots. You can email me, hit up my Instagram, or leave a comment asking any clarification questions. I have no problem answering them. Probably best through Instagram, because I can always send like a voice or a video where I can go really in depth in it instead of typing out like a long response, if that's the case. But yeah, just have some patience. There's not going to be really editing involved in this, so it's just like a straight through thing. Okay, so when we get into dialogue, let's kind of clear our brains a bit. Okay, let's not worry too much about all the things that you know about dialogue. I'm pretty sure you know some stuff, especially if you're a beginning writer. You probably have looked up videos and read things, and so just kind of clear your brain of all of that. And let's kind of start with like an empty vessel in our skull. All right, so let's see what the first thing I got. Okay, so when it comes to dialogue, and again, I want to preface by saying everything that I'm saying is not Bible. These are just things that will help you, okay, at the end of the day. They may not always work, they may not always be effective, but they will help you more than they won't, okay? So when it comes to dialogue, okay, it's gonna have three things that its job is to do whenever you're writing dialogue in a script. One thing that's gonna introduce, okay, and I'll break these down a little bit more. It introduces something, it reveals something, and it reminds something, okay? So every single dialogue scene that you do, not necessarily every bit of dialogue, but they're within the context of the scene, as it needs to accomplish one of these things. And it can get a little bit complex because one character may be introducing something while one is reminding something. But as you write more dialogue, you kind of figure this out on your own. I can't get micromanaging on that. But this is something you should keep in mind when you're writing dialogue. Am I introducing anything? Am I revealing anything? Am I reminding us of anything? Okay? Now, when it comes to these, okay, what you're going to kind of focus on, and I think you can figure this out. Oh, I don't know how I did that. These are going to pertain primarily to these three things. Okay? So you're introducing, revealing, or reminding us of either something dealing with the plot, something dealing with a character, usually a character that's in that scene of dialogue, or a theme that's regarding around your narrative, your screenplay, your story, whatever. Okay? So that's kind of the main thing you need to understand before you're actually going to even start writing a script. Okay? Now, with the plot, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but this is just more like just compounding onto this information. When you're when you're introducing, revealing, or reminding us something of the plot, you may be thinking like, what do you mean? Like, what of the plot? It can be a plot point, a plot detail, or an element. Okay, so I don't know if you can read this. So when you are introducing, revealing, or reminding us of something in the plot within the exchange of dialogue, you can cover a plot point, a plot detail, and then a plot element. That's not elementary, okay? And there's more like this list and this sub list. This sub list of plot expands a lot more than that. It can or it can't, but that's kind of the general main thing that you default to. Now, as far as character's a little bit more extensive, and again, this list is like it's ongoing, okay, but you're getting the idea of what we're getting at here. So for character, it's going to be like a belief, a trait, or a flaw. Okay? Among trait, you can kind of consider like behavior and attitude as part of that. That's what I have in here. But you're going to look at a belief system of the character, a certain trait, or a flaw. Now, trait and flaw may seem like it's interchangeable, but not really. Like a trait could be something as arbitrary as like they like to smack their lips all the time. A flaw is like they forget stuff, So kind of make a distinguish those two things as not really being overlapping. Now, if you're introducing, revealing, or reminding us of a particular theme within a dialogue, it's going to be a motif, a message, or a belief. Obviously, when you come up with a theme, an overarching theme of your narrative, there might be sub-themes or there could be multiple themes, one stronger than the other. But, when you kind of want to introduce, reveal, or remind us of a theme, within that theme, you can deliver a message that's tied to that theme, a motif of sorts. Like, I can think of a good example off the top of my head, like in Fight Club, the bar of soap is a motif, and you can kind of tie it into the whole theme of things if you really want to get deep into it, or a belief system. Like in Fight Club, one of the themes is like breaking rules and going against society, and a kind of a belief system that they have is first rule Fight Club is don't talk about Fight Club, etc., etc. So, this may seem like, okay, we have all of this down, but like, what do I do with it? Like, how do I open a scene? Like, what do I do when I want to start writing? Like, how do I really implement this? Okay, so we're going to get into that right now. Okay, so let me clear this out. Take a moment to look at it. By the way, if you want like the written copy of this script, I can type one out, or I can take pictures and send it to you. Just hit the DM on the Instagram, Lowriders. Make a comment here, and I think I'm actually gonna put a link in the description as well for like a picture of that, of the script that I have of that, because it's basically all the same things. So get it all down, write it down if you need to, or you can go to that link. All right? 3, 2, 1. Okay. Now, how do I do this? Like, okay, you get that, you understand. Now, what you're going to do now is how you implement that is you're going to take those 3 main things like plot, character, and theme, and you're going to rotate, right? It's not good. Rotate between plot, character, and theme. Okay? So don't necessarily go plot every piece of dialogue that you're writing in your script is going to be plot driven, introducing plot, revealing, reminding us of plot. You have to rotate. So some scenes are going to be focused on the character, theme, and all that. And there could be, again, there could be like coexisting happening here. Like a dialogue scene can have mostly character revealing or character introducing things, while it has elements of like theme, of revealing theme or reminding us of theme. So give yourself some space. Don't be so like strict with yourself on this. Like allow fluidity in it, okay? But this is the main thing that I wanna point out. So in one of the last workshops, I talked about the 3-act structure. So let's divide our script into 3 parts. Don't think so much acts, but you can think of it in acts, but let's see it as parts, right? Okay. So part 1, 2, 3. So first half, second half, third half, so to speak. So the first half, what you want to do is you mainly, so we're going to do P for plot, C for character, T for theme, okay? You mainly want to do plot and theme more so than character. Okay, we're not getting rid of character, so you can do plot, character more so than theme. So it's kind of a little bit interchangeable. But the main thing here is we're focusing on plot for this first third. Okay? Obviously, we're still focusing on characters. We're developing characters, but you want to make sure that you give the dialogue that's more centric towards plot and establishing theme. Now, the first part, this first third of your script is usually just getting things going. It's to build the momentum. It's probably like the first 20 to 30 pages tops. More so closer to like 20, 25, right? Then you're going to look at this middle part, right? That's like the real meat of everything. Now, what you're going to do is it's going to be more of it's going to be like an equal triangle. Okay, so it's going to be like plot, character, theme. So you're going to share the dialogue scenes are going to have a balance of these. So in one scene, you kind of want to, I don't want to say rotate, but you just got to make sure, like, when you're writing those scenes through that really meaty part, probably like 50 to 60 pages here now, you want to be like, okay, am I, through these 50, 60 pages, there's like a good third that are about plot, a good third that mostly focus on character, and a good third that mostly focus on theme or have some sort of thematic element to it. If you were to pick, though, you want to focus probably more on these two. Okay, so dialogue scenes, plot and character driven. And you can sprinkle in some theme stuff. Because theme, once you kind of establish the theme, you're going to, as you progress through the narrative, you're going to do more reminding and revealing. So, and as far as reminding and revealing of theme, and more so reminding, because once people establish, oh, this movie's about family, oh, this movie's like anti-war or whatever, it's just like a reminder now at that point. Keep it simple, okay? Now, the third part is going to be character, plot, over theme. And this one really drive the character home, because this is where you've taken the opportunity to build characters. You may have not focused on developing, or not really developing, but you may have not focused so much on the character early on, but the character starts making more of its authority in the narrative, and by the end, it's like the audience should be truly invested in the characters. So that dialogue really needs to just like bring more and more out of them. I don't want to call it a slow burn, because you can, even though the plot and theme are the kind of the main aspects of what the dialogue is being focused on through this first third, you can still provide a lot of interesting character elements to it. That doesn't mean that you're neglecting these guys. So that's what you have to understand. Like, none of these means that you're neglecting. You're just going to make sure you're going to put a little bit more focus and provide the audience with plot and theme in the dialogue more than character, okay? But you can establish a really interesting character early on, and then kind of give the rest of this first third focused on plot and theme. So it's like you can kind of like figure out how you want to arrange that. But that's essentially how you're now going to approach the writing part, in terms of dividing up the workload in terms of the dialogue. So now you can have an idea, okay, now that I'm going to start writing the script, those first 20 or so pages, give or take, I need to kind of focus the dialogue a little bit on plot and theme more so than character. I can have character moments that hooks the audience in, but I can hold off on focusing dialogue so much on character until the second half, or the second third. Once I get to the second third, I can kind of ease up on the theme. People get it, they establish it. But now I can now the plot's really unraveling. So obviously a lot of dialogue is going to be really plot based. But now I can actually, taking the plot based and the things that are happening in the narrative are going to really start probably revealing a lot of the things about the characters. You're introducing characters, you're revealing a lot, and you can continue to reveal more at the end, but also remind us of things that was revealed previously. And then of course when you get to the end, you're like, okay, at this point it's like the plot, we know what's going to happen. They got to save the earth, or they got to win the court case or whatever. So at that point the plot's already gone, it's going, it's there. So now I just need to really hanker down on characters and really drive it home, because the characters are really gonna be the ones to stick the landing for the narrative. They're gonna stick the landing. So now it's like I gotta really just focus on that, tie them to the plot, and then I can at the tail end remind us of this theme and kind of reiterate that. So that's now you know how you can approach the sort of method and the blueprint for when you're going to start. Okay? So now it's like, okay, I know how to start this. Let's get started, right? So take a look at that, snap it, do whatever you need, give you a few moments, have some coffee. I do these pretty late. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. So just bear with me. I work full-time job as a pizza chef, which is very fun. I love it. And then obviously I make time to spend with people that I care about. It's always good. And then on my other free time, I do a lot of writing. I work with writers, and then late at night I stay up and do this stuff. So apologies if I get a little drowsy. All right, that should have been enough. My little pointless rant. Should have given you enough time to get that in. All right. Now, let's look at, let's get this motherfucker going. First draft, right? Okay, so what do we do? What do we got? What do we got? So this in my notes is going to be, try to keep this simple and straightforward. And okay, so it's going to get pretty deep into here. So the first thing is, let's have some baseline rules. Okay? Let's not fall into traps that a lot of writers get, even like seasoned writers get into when they start writing a script and it's like getting dialogue going. Again, these are really just for the first draft. So just bear with me and you'll understand why it's like this for now. Okay, so it's basically three don'ts and three do's. Don'ts first. Don't be fancy. Don't try to be fancy with the dialogue. Nothing that, like, save that for later when you need to, when it really matters. Okay. Oh, sorry. Just give me a second. Fix that. Now, one thing I want to make sure is, like, to make it clear, like, if you write something that is fancy, it just happens organically, that doesn't mean go and make it unfancy. The point is, like, you're not going out of your way to try to be fancy with the dialogue. Same thing with this, don't be clever. Don't worry about being clever. If you can't think of a clever way to write it, just write it as is. And that kind of ties into don't be poetic. And I want to reiterate, this is first draft stuff. Especially if you're a beginner writer, this is the most effective, easiest way to learn dialogue. Okay? Now, how does this tie in to the three do's? Okay? Take a screenshot if you need it. I'll give you about 5 seconds. One to the over 5. Cool. All right. So now the do's. Do be direct. I know that's not like really grammatically perfect, but you get the fuck I'm saying. Do be direct. Like, just be direct with your dialogue. Hand me the gun. I'm sad. This hurts my feelings. I'm so happy right now. Like, just be direct. So be simple. This kind of goes into like the fancy thing. Like, if you're trying to articulate something or have a character, like, don't try to be well, actually, this is like fancy clever, but you get what I'm saying. Keep it simple. Make it so that if your character is trying to articulate a certain thing, like they're teaching a character how to like swing a sword, you can just keep the instructions in simple. If they're trying to teach this other character how to swing a sword and use a sword, just keep it simple. Again, that goes in line with direct. Like, these all kind of like tie together. This one's my favorite one. And I'm gonna underline it. And apologies ahead if I misspell anything. That just happens. Do be digestible, okay? That means that when they read the dialogue, they understand 100% what's being said, what they're supposed to absorb from that, and what the message or the intent is supposed to be. It should be literally like reading, I don't want to say Dr. Seuss, but like 5 like a 10-year-old or a teenager should be able to read it and be like, okay, I know what's happening here in terms of the I know what conversation and what's being communicated. So it needs to be just very digestible. Okay? And the reason why you want to do this is because when you revise things, if you fuck around with all the fancy, clever, poetic stuff, you can actually get really confused about what am I talking about here? Because it's a first draft. Sometimes you're just gonna write dialogue scenes that like don't really make any sense because you're trying too hard to be clever and fancy. So if you keep it direct and simple, you're really looking at those dialogue bits, those all the dialogue is almost like glorified notes. Oh, this is what they're saying. Okay, now I know what the scene really is. I know what the message I'm trying to convey. Because I've had that too, where I've gotten tried to get too fancy or poetic or clever, and I'm like, man, what was I trying to get with this scene? What was I trying to achieve? What was the message I was trying to convey to the audience at this point? It's because it's too much too early. Of course, as you get better, you can get away with that, but you know, let's be direct, simple, and digestible. Okay, so a lot of this will be very much like. Oh my god, that's terrible writing. Bear with me. Not the best organization here, but none of you are done. So essentially, you're what you're doing a lot for this first draft is info dumping, like explaining things like maybe that don't need to be explained, and just telling rather than showing. Okay. Um, let's see. I think I had something. Yeah, I'm gonna bring this up later. But there is a podcast called Script Apart with Zach Krager. He wrote Barbarian, and he talks a lot about his first drafts, how he just kind of concedes to this, like, fuck it, I'm just gonna like tell instead of show. And then he realizes in revisions later, he didn't need to change anything. It actually worked out really well. So it's just a matter of like not overthinking it too hard. Okay? So let's do that. Keep that in mind. And I'm actually going to give an example here in real time. Okay, so you're going to see some very poorly written dialogue, but it's just going to show you very much like what I mean by that. Okay? Got it? There we go. So we're not going to focus on like the prose or the action bits. It's just we're just focusing on dialogue. So that's just what I'm gonna write. So powering through. Okay, so let's say a woman is like confronting a parent. We'll do a one. It doesn't really matter the gender, but characters confronting their parent, and their parent was like abusive or neglectful. Okay, let's maybe not get that deep. Let's just say their parent did something they didn't like, right? So let's say Abby, and they are going. It's like Abby's gonna tell their mother. The deeper, let's say the deeper poetic aspect of it is the mother tried to live vicariously through her, and as a result, the mother continuously tried to have sort of like a symbiotic relationship instead of a motherly one, and forced the daughter to be so attached to her and attach herself so much to the daughter. The daughter struggled to create identity for herself, right? We got a little bit deep there, right? So you could have dialogue that goes back and forth that really has like the subtext and the way that they speak and all that. But what we're going to do, if it's a first draft, it's like Abby's going to convey how much that hurt her feelings and how much that she resents her mom for that. So what do we write for the dialogue? We write that. I'm going to abbreviate some of these words. Vicariously through me, hurt me, my identity, and makes me resent you. I know you probably can't read that because that's fucking chicken scratch, but Mom, the way you live vicariously through me hurt me, my identity, and makes me resent you. That's the dialogue you write. That's what you write. That's what you write the first draft. Okay? Now, the great thing is that with modern technology, especially any software you use, whether it's Final Draft, I think it's like Fade In, Celtics, whatever people call it, and Writer Duet, which is what I use, is when you write dialogue, you write something down, you're like, okay, you can move on, okay? And continue on with the thing. And you can have a mom say, you're blaming me for something that isn't my fault. And obviously that's just very direct, simple, digestible dialogue. We're literally telling their emotions and feeding it. Because remember, the first draft is really for your eyes only, and maybe another writing partner. But so you don't have to worry like, oh my God, when people read, nobody's going to read this. It's only going to be you. Stop worrying. Okay? Nobody's going to read this. So once you have that and you write the scene, the great thing about these software things is that they have a little guy, and I know Writer's Duet has this. I don't know how Final Draft does it, but they have a little guy that looks like that, and that is the comment tool. You click on that, and another little box pops up, and this guy will be attached to this dialogue because you'll see it for every like new line. You'll have another little guy pop up like this. When you hit it, there's a thing there, and what you can do is add a comment for you later to use in revisions of what you're trying to or want to do with this scene or this piece of dialogue. This particular piece of dialogue, or the whole scene. Then once you do that, you hit the check, it saves, and then later on when you start revising, you click this little guy again, this thing pops up, and you can remind yourself of what you're trying to achieve here. And the reason why I emphasize this is what a lot of fucking writers do. They write this, they get done with the scene, and they say, you know what? I have an idea right now. I'm going to rewrite this scene. Do not fucking rewrite until you hit fade to black, roll credits on your first draft. Do not fucking rewrite while you're writing. Don't do that. Add the comment, leave it the fuck alone. The comment's good enough. Move the fuck on. I'm dead serious. Stop it. It's the most frustrating thing I work with every writers. It's like, oh, we worked on 20 pages. Great. Hey, you know I was supposed to work on those next 10 from 20 to 30. Well, I just started rewriting. It's like, okay, throw the whole fucking script away. We're not doing this. Sorry for that rant, but I'm dead serious. Stop doing that. No revising and no rewriting as you go. That is a hard rule. I'm actually going to write it. I'm actually going to write it in the thing so you can take a screenshot. Okay? No. Or as you go. Okay? No rewriting or revising as you go. Sad face. Screenshot that. Cool. Okay. So now one thing I also want to point out is don't worry so much on page count, especially if this is like you're brand new to this and this is a first draft. If you've written feature-length screenplays before, you really shouldn't be worrying about page count because you kind of already got the feel of it. You kind of already have somewhat of a rhythm down with your writing that you know, like you'll hit that 90 to 100 pages. But especially if you're a first-time screenwriter and you're trying to write a first draft feature length, which is 90, technically it's over anything over 60 pages, but big boys, big girls here, 90 pages. For right now, don't worry so much about page count. Just get in the rhythm of writing. Yes, if you go really far under 90, it's going to make the rewriting and revising more taxing, but you can do it. I believe in you. Okay? So, what I'm going to do is outline sort of a beat sheet. Okay? Now, I know I just said don't worry about page count. Yes, but what you want to do too is, this isn't, the reason why I'm putting this in right now is because not everybody works well off a beat sheet. But if you're really like, I don't know where to start, create a beat sheet. And a really simple beat sheet is do 30 scenes. 30 scenes from start to finish. And on average, if every scene is about 3 pages, you have a 90-page feature. And again, this is a first draft. Don't be so strict with yourself. Everything that I've told you is just methods and guides to get you to it and for you to apply them when they really are effective, okay? So, for example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create sort of a beat sheet to begin with. I don't know if I could fit 30 on this fucking board, but I'll try my best. But once I get even to like 10, you're going to see like, oh, okay, like this is how I can kind of figure things out. So the way this is going to work is when you do a beat sheet, you kind of want to refer back to the rotation chart or the rotation graph that I showed, where it's divided into 3 parts of a film, of a narrative, and you kind of see, plot and theme over character and all that. So now let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So each beat is a scene, okay? And when I say on average 3 pages, 3 minutes, one beat may be a page, another beat may be 7 pages. That's why I'm saying, like, don't worry so much about, page count, because it's gonna kind of balance itself out, okay? So let's say I'm gonna do an intro. And let's say we're gonna do like kind of like a hero versus villain type thing. So the intro I want to introduce the villain. Okay. After that, I'm going to build the world. So I'll probably have some side characters or supporting characters. I don't want to get too deep into this because I don't want to convolute everything. And main character. And then in this scene, I want to have like an action scene, like a small action scene with the main character showcasing like their abilities. Then another scene of like downtime with the main character and let's say the primary supporting character talking about like themes, themes of the stuff. This main character, we could just like reveal, or actually like, let me introduce, I'm going to be introducing characters here, so it's like really just establishing who they are, and I'm going to continue to introduce the main character a little bit more, so it's like introduction plus revealing. So this is like the hero. This one is introducing the villain, so it's like another character part. And then So as you're kind of seeing, I'm already setting up like the dialogue. So I'm gonna have something about the villain that introduces them to let you know what the villain. So the dialogue's gonna be focused on that. Then I'm gonna, build and start building the building into the plot, so to speak. A supporting character and a main character, the hero, so to speak. We're gonna introduce them, but they may be talking. At this point, I could be like, okay, what can they be talking about? They could probably be talking about each other, maybe a little bit of that, but again, I want to focus on plot and theme a little bit more than characters. So we're gonna have them talk about the plot regarding, and the plot maybe not be fully introduced, but it's plot related. That's the thing that I want you to understand. So on this one, I'm gonna have them talk about this thing that happened with the villain earlier. So that's plot related, and I mean we're technically talking about the other characters, but it's really driven by the plot. And then the scene after that, I'm gonna have an action scene where the main character does stuff. So I'm kind of revealing more of them, but in this one I can reveal more so a theme here, and the theme can be relative to the narrative, like they live in a city that is like falling apart with crime, and that's part of the theme, is like this sort of downfall of society. Okay, and that theme can also be introduced here. So it's like we're kind of like reiterating things, but through different perspectives, through a villain perspective, hero perspective. So what you would do on this beat sheet is essentially this. This is how you're literally plotting out your dialogue. So the dialogue's gonna be about this, dialogue will be that. And notice I'm not being super specific. I'm not like, oh, dialogue's gonna be introducing theme and they're gonna say this and that. I'm going to discover that as I write, okay? So as you're doing this beat sheet, we did 4. So if you're looking at 3, that's like 12 pages right there. We're already like 12 pages in, and we have at least an idea of the dialogue being presented. Now, also, you have to understand that not every scene is going to have meaningful dialogue. Like if you look at The Dark Knight, there's action scenes where there's no dialogue. Okay, so that's, the way I want you to look at it is your dialogue is through action at that point. So you're still having dialogue, but it is through action. It is through the characters responding and reacting to what is going on. So that's how you're going to look at that. I'll kind of talk more a little bit about that later as I get deeper into like second drafts and final drafts and stuff. Okay. So if you're not like really sure where to start, and you already understand the idea of dividing into thirds, focusing more on plot and theme, and with character kind of coming to support that, and then going into the second third of like an equal balanced rotation of plot, character, and theme, and then obviously you understand that. Now you have like a more concrete, focused plan and blueprint of like where you're gonna, like how you're really gonna start and actually implement these things. So now you can look at that graph that I made, that chart, or whatever you want to call it, of the thirds. You can create your beat sheet, and then you can get started page 1. And again, do not worry about page count. Okay, page 1, introduce the villain. What do I want the villain? I want the villain to do this, blah, blah, blah. So there's going to be kind of like a combination of freestyling it, but also planning it. Because it's like you want to introduce the villain, so naturally you're going to be like, okay, I'm probably going to have them commit a crime or something. And of course, I know I'm focusing on superhero, but you can even do this for like rom-coms. Like, let me introduce the love interest and show how awful their love life is. And then you introduce like the main character who's going to pursue them and, stuff like that. So it's very interchangeable if you just kind of like take the time to like step back and be like, oh, you can kind of switch this out with any genre and it works, As far as, again, now the one thing I want to make sure is when you divide this into thirds, it's probably going to be a little bit different. Because like I said earlier, when you divide it into thirds, that first third is really about 20 to 30 pages max, but more so about like 20 to 25. So if you're doing a beat sheet of about 30 scenes, probably beat 7 and 8 is where that first third ends, because that's 21 to 24 pages. You can do it where you even it out, 10, 10, and 10, but I think that I just don't think that's a good idea, especially if it's your first time and you're really just kind of getting into it. Kind of stick to that sort of that the weight difference between each one, 20 to 25 pages. I think I said 50 to 60. Or really, it should be like 40 to 50. 45 to 65. Again, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's kind of fluid, but that middle part is about, let's say, 45 to 65, and then that last part, the last third, is like 15 to 20. But of course, as you get better, you can experiment with those weights a little bit more. So that's essentially, if you're still at the point where you're like, I don't really know how to start, like first page, like what do I do? I know, like I understand everything. That. And if this isn't enough, dude, you just got to sit down and start writing at this point. Okay, so kind of get an idea of that. All right. So, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, once you get started, it's just a matter of doing it. Sitting down as often, frequently, and consistently as possible, knocking page after page out, beat after beat down, getting the dialogue, what they want to say, what you intend for them to say, and just getting it on the page. Doing it until you knock out all the beats, till you get from first third, second third, final third, and you just get everything down. Okay? Again, this is dialogue focused on screenplays. So we're not really talking too much about like action and prose. We will get to that to an extent because it does matter. So now you've made it. You've done all the beats. You put all the dialogue down. You were very direct. You were very simple. You were very digestible. You weren't getting fancy. You weren't getting clever. You weren't getting poetic. And you're 82 pages in. You're done. 95 pages, you're done. 75, doesn't matter. You finished the first draft. You power through. Because really, I can do all these charts and give all these examples, but what it comes down to is you sitting down and writing that first, interior, exterior, and just going from there, and just sticking to the strategy that you've created for yourself to get from, start to finish. Okay, for that first draft. So you have the first draft done, right? And you've done, I think the most important thing is those little comments, the little comment feature on those screenwriting software. You've done that, okay? So now we get into the real fun stuff. I do not know why I can't keep it on the center. When we start to revise and rewrite, okay? So this is where I'm coming back to the Zach Kreger in the Script Apart podcast, okay? The Script Apart podcast, he talks about, and I'll write it here. Script Apart, Zach Kreger. Spells his name like mine, so that could either be a great sign or a terrible sign. But he talks about that first draft when he gets into a point where he's like overthinking it, or he's like, oh, I have to write the dialogue perfect. And he basically submits the idea of like, fuck it, I'll just write it the most simplest, quote unquote, amateur way. And then he realizes many times, maybe not many times, but multiple times, he'll go through and he's like, okay, time to revise, rewrite. And he's going through and he's making his notes, and then he'll get to certain scenes and he'll be like, oh, the dialogue's fine. Like this dialogue actually works. So that's kind of the first thing you have to realize. And I'll have another video, just like a regular studio video, that talks about first drafts and sort of at times unhealthy indoctrination that first drafts are just always completely shit. I'm not going to get into that right now because we want to focus on this. I don't want to get distracted. But you can kind of knock things out the park in that first draft, believe it or not. So don't go into this revising and rewriting thing thinking that everything that you put down is going to have to go through this like complete plastic surgery redo or whatever the fuck you want to call it. You can, if you read something, you're like, actually, this works pretty well. Like 80-90% of this is pretty much on point, and you just need to tweak some things around. That's okay. You can do that. It's rare that it's going to be a lot of stuff, but don't be shocked if like 3 or 4 scenes have that. So I want you to understand that before anything, okay? Now, this is something I'm going to write on the board again, so you can take a screenshot. Sorry, I'm taking a while. Hope this thing isn't already going dead on me. No good dialogue exists without bad dialogue. You don't know what good writing is until you do bad writing. That's how it works. Once you actually write something bad, then you're like, oh, this is bad. So I know the opposite of that is good. But if you think everything you write is good, how do you know if you've never written anything bad? You see how that works? So it's like food. A lot of times people spend their whole life eating like fast food, and they think that's good food. And they've never been to somewhere that has like, actually good food. But at the same time, there's people that have had like good food, but they don't know food that's better than that. So it's like, I've never eaten fast food, therefore like I only eat good food. But it's also like, well, you've never had fast food either, so you don't really know if the stuff you're eating is actually good. You're just assuming it is because you've avoided bad fast food. You kind of get what I'm saying, right? So it's the same thing. Like you have to kind of write bad dialogue on purpose to really understand where to get to the bad dialogue. And I want to emphasize that most because it's like people get so ashamed when they write bad. It's like, no, that's a good thing, because if you can identify that you have bad dialogue, because there's a difference between dialogue that doesn't, like bad dialogue is pretty obvious, and then there's dialogue where maybe people just don't get it, or it's a little bit too poetic or whatever. That's all like preference and subjective. But bad dialogue is pretty objective. So when somebody's like, "Oh, I have bad dialogue," I'm like, no, that's a good thing, because now like what to avoid now going into revising and writing. You know that bad dialogue right there, you're gonna avoid that, and you're gonna get over here to that good dialogue. Okay. So as far as the revising and revisions, I recommend that you print out your script. Print out your script and get a red pen. Do it the old-fashioned way. If you don't want to do that, if you can't do that, then it's still fine. You could do it on, the software. Works just fine. It's just a little bit tedious. It's a little bit more strenuous on your eyes. But I do highly recommend printing it out. So some things that you need to take into consideration. Revising and writing is pretty straightforward if you follow this kind of formula, and it's not as hard. It really gets harder when you're on the tail end. You're like, I have to, the poetic aspect of this dialogue, I really have to nail it. Like that's where the hard part really gets. But as far as right now, with revising and writing, I mean, they kind of like, you kind of revise first before you write, and there is a little bit of a difference. Like revising is really just like the changing in the notes. Like I'm gonna take this out and that, and then the rewriting is actually like, okay, I'm taking all this out, so I'm actually deleting it and then like writing in dialogue in place of that, or rewording certain things, like the actual act of like rewriting. But I'm gonna stop there. I'm not trying to get too like muddy with it. So the first thing is, I'm sorry if using all caps probably annoys some of you, but fuck it. So the first thing is, when I say highlight, you can use a literal highlighter, or you can underline, or you can, on the software, you can, I suggest like changing the color or bolding, like, highlighting, literally highlighting and bolding the dialogue, but highlight what stays. So remember that example I gave you? You had that whole thing with like Abby talking to her mom. I may want to keep the line that says "I resent you." I feel like, even though it's very direct, but it's very real and raw. So I'd probably highlight that, and then, I go through every dial and I just highlight the stuff that I know I want to keep in there. And if there's nothing you want to keep in there, and you want to just completely change the dialogue or the line, just don't highlight anything in it. You'll figure it out, But definitely go through the dialogue piece by piece and like, okay, I want to keep this, I want to keep that. Sometimes you'll keep whole things of dialogue, and you're just gonna like take a word out here and there, just highlight the whole thing. You can highlight individual words that you're like, I want to use this word, and whatever they say, like, I still like that word. So that's one thing you want to do, go through and highlight the stuff that you want to keep. Okay. So this one's a little, I'm trying, like, when I was doing these notes, I was like, oh, these kind of contradicts each other. So this is what I'm going to do. It actually makes sense, but it's like kind of confusing, but it makes sense. I'll just try to articulate it slow so I can articulate it in a way that doesn't make me sound stupid. So this one, remove the fact. This is pretty obvious. There may be whole scenes where you're like, this is a completely fluff scene. I was just trying to get from 55 to 60 pages. So I need to remove this whole scene. Okay? If you have paper and pen, just X it out and make a note. Like, I need to add a scene that does this, that maybe calls back to this thing. Once you have a script, it's going to be kind of easy to figure out like what you need to add in place of it. Or sometimes you could just take the whole scene out and it doesn't really affect. You can just bump up the scene behind it up top, up in its place. But you want to cut out the fat. If you're on the software, I think there's a strike through method, so you can do a strike through, or what you can do is just italicize everything. So italicize the whole thing, so at least like, okay, like I'm gonna probably get rid of this. This is like fatty. I'm just gonna have to rewrite this whole scene, put a whole new scene in, or just take it out if I can take it out without it affecting anything. So that's a part of it. This is a little bit harder to do if you have a script that's barely at 90 pages. If you have a script that's like 120, 130, it's a lot more, it's less stressful. Okay. So the third thing, add emphasis. So with this is where you go through the dialogue. Each of these things, you're starting from page 1 again. Okay, so when you start from page 1, you highlight the things that stays. You go back to page 1, you start removing the fat. And this could also be like, for example, you highlighted what stays for that dialogue example that I gave. And then there's probably like the lines where she says, I hated that you live vicariously to me. Like, I'll remove that. That's fat. I'm not going to have that. Because I know at this point it's like, that's going to be planned. Or like the audience is going to understand that before we actually get to that dialogue. I'm going to work the script so that by the time Abby vents to her mom, all she really needs to do is say, I resent you. And people know exactly why she resents her mom, because they've seen it build up into that moment. But I'm not going to go too deep into that, because that you understand that, and I want the focus to really just be on dialogue. So add emphasis. Start from page 1, and this is where you again add it with the notes. Like, you can point to certain, like, a good thing is, like, let's say you want a character to hold on one second, let me jump ahead here. Okay, cool. I was going to add something here that I was jumping ahead. So when you add emphasis, it could be, when you have paper and pen, you can draw a line and say, I want this word to be heavy when the character says it. So you may want to bold that line or underline it. A lot of writers, to emphasize a line for the actor to emphasize, they'll underline it. And then emphasis of, like, also body language, like parentheticals. Like, if you want to add a parenthetical of, like, a beat or anything like that, you want to put that in there. Obviously, try not to do too many like, don't just have it littered. Be precise about it, in my opinion. I sometimes like to use parentheticals a lot. It just, I don't know. For me, it's nice sometimes. Add emphasis. And also, you can, if you're on the software, you can just add to the note on that little comment bubble. So you're going to just add a second note to that in addition to it. Other emphasis things you can do is put in things like, I want them to be shouting, I want to build, what's a good way of putting this? I don't want to say build tension, because that's more narrative focused. I wanted something directly with line, but it's sort of like repeat this line over and over again. And you kind of get the idea. It's just like, you want to go through and then just pinpoint where you want to emphasize certain stylistic things of regarding the specific dialogue being said. Whether it's pacing, adding a beat, emphasizing a word, what's it called? Yeah, basic stuff like that. Let's keep it at that, because my brain keeps going into the later thing that I'm going to bring up. So just simple like that. And that's more of like a note thing. Now, the last thing is, let's say you've gone through this, right? So you remove the fat. That stuff's not going to be in the second, third draft or whatever. You've highlighted what stays. You've put in little notes of, like, where you want to add emphasis on certain parts of dialogue, okay? There's still going to be little other dialogue that, you didn't highlight because you're not sure if it's going to stay, but you didn't remove it because you're not sure if you still want to use it. So those are scraps, okay? Now, what you can do for that is you can underline it. So you can underline it. You can do italicized if you want, but italicized is kind of signaling stuff we're removing. But you want to keep the scraps. Keep the scraps. And if you have a pen or paper, you can add your notes of, like, this might be good dialogue I can use in another scene, in this particular scene. If you're on the software, you add a note, all of that, right? So those are, like, the 4 things that you are going to do, right? So once you've done all that, you're going to have a bunch of scribbled notes and all of everything. This is the thing. This is more like a technological thing. First of all, mental picture, screenshot that. And use in other ways. I already explained what I meant by that, so. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now that you have, again, this is going to be easier, this next part, if you have pen and paper. If you did it on pen and paper and you didn't do it through the software. So the next thing you're going to do as you're revising, now you're going to actually get to the rewriting part, is create a copy. Create a copy of that first draft. Or we can even say duplicate of first draft. And then what you're going to do is you're going to rewrite, rewrite the copy, and then use original as reference. Or not, sorry. As a backup, sorry. I don't want to use the word reference because it actually misleads a little bit. So once you do all this, you're going to obviously have the file, and you're going to go to like your file, edit, settings, whatever it is in your software, and you're going to put duplicate file. So now you have the original first draft file with all of your notes, or if you and if you have it here on your printed version, you have all of your notes here. You still make a duplicate. Now but close out the original. So the original is there because there have been times where I have done so many revisions where I in dialogue and stuff, I'm like, damn, I really wish I had the original with my original notes to see what I was thinking and maybe figure this thing out, because I've overdone it, or maybe I took a scene out really thinking it wasn't going to work, added a new scene, and then the third, fourth draft later, I'm like, oh, this scene really doesn't work. The one I had in the first draft is better. So I need to figure out what that is, re-add it, and rewrite and revise. So just keep that original copy, close it out, have the duplicate out. The duplicate's going to have all the notes. It's going to be a duplicate. It's going to have the things that, you italicize to cut out, like the fat. It's going to have the bolded, highlighted stuff that you want to keep. It's going to have the little notes, everything. And what you're going to do page by page is now you're going to rewrite. So you're going to go to those first dialogue things, and you're going to actually delete the stuff that you have set to be cut out. You're going to delete that. The stuff you have highlighted, you're going to keep it in there. And then, the stuff, and then from there, you're going to actually rewrite the dialogue. Okay. So going back to that Abby dialogue to her mother, the, hypothetical scene, it's like, I resent you, so I'll probably have that. And it's like, do I want to add anything? And this is where, again, you're writing again. So it's like, you can add more to that dialogue, or you could just go straight to the next bit of dialogue and rewrite that based on your notes. And then of course, as you go through that, you're clearing out the notes. So, whatever note you have in the software, you can clear it out and it's gone. Like you've fulfilled that note. And now what you're doing is you're saving your file as a clean copy. There's no notes written all over it. There's no all these little italicized and bolded things. It's all just a clean, so to speak, a clean copy. And you're going to just do that from page 1 all the way to the end. And you're just going to go dialogue by dialogue, note by note, highlight by emphasis, by scraps, by all of that. And you're going to start rewriting those dialogue pieces. And of course, that's tedious. It can be very long. I suggest 1 page a day. You'll do more than 1 page. You'll do a page and be like, okay, I can do a couple more. But just have the goal of doing a page a day of that. And of course, not every single page of dialogue is going to need a overhaul of rewriting. Some stuff you're going to be like, I don't need to do much. I can just kind of move this around. It takes a couple minutes. And then other things of dialogue, it's going to be this might take me all day, to really figure this out. So that's what the duplicate is for, so that you can just remove all of the markings, all of the things, and just have a revised first draft with 0 notes, zero markings, and it's just clean, and you can read it with a clear vision. That, you know, you're not distracted by anything else. And obviously, if you have the paper copy, you can always just look at the paper copy, look at the duplicate, and then change everything out in the duplicate according to what you have on the paper copy. So that's the thing that is so important to me in terms of like a technological thing. Okay. So I'm gonna give like an example. Now, let's kind of go back to that Abby dialogue, right? Obviously, it's not going to be exactly what I wrote before, but it'll be close because I don't remember exactly what I wrote. Let's see. Mom making me live vicariously through you. It's probably not the best way of saying that, but you get it. Made me sad and unable to have an identity. It made me resent you. Makes me resent you. Right, so let's say that was the original. So the highlight, let's say I'm highlighting, I like that word resent. I resent you, okay? Mom living vicariously through you. I'm going to have that removed because, like I said, at this point in the script, I would assume that a lot of this, that I would achieve the showing of the mom doing that and the showing of the character building that resentment. She just hasn't vocalized it yet. Okay? Made me sad and unable to have an identity. So I'm going to keep this. This is a scrap, but I'm going to rewrite it. Okay? So let's say that's how your note is. Okay? So I'm going to get rid of that. Resent you is like the main thing. So that is what the note would look like. And you're going to go scene by scene and do all this, right? Now, I'm giving you a moment to kind of see and get a visual of that. So, makes me sad and unable to have an identity, resent you. So now when I come to that, in my new my duplicate, I obviously will delete this. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put I resent you. It's a direct, and it's actually a very powerful thing for Abby to say. And then obviously the make me sad and identity, how do I say that in a little bit more subtextual ways? So she could say something. Again, remember, we're just like on the first revision and rewrite. So we're starting to get into like the poetry aspect or the being clever part. And so it makes me sad when I lost my identity. So how can she say that in a way that's not just direct? Okay? So let's say I resent you. And okay, we also added some emphasis, right? So let's say one of the emphasis is like, I'm going to add this little bit. So there's like a little pause. I resent you. When I look in the mirror, I see a stranger. Boom, right there. So that conveys the aspect that she doesn't have an idea. She sees a stranger. She doesn't know who that is. And even that alone can evoke a sadness, or you know, it's sort of like, we're going to get that she's pretty fucking sad, right? So this kind of goes into what the other aspect of this. So when you're rewriting this dialogue, it can be very tedious, because one of the things that you're kind of focusing on as you're, and this is sort of the thing. This is cyclical. So even though you get through this revision and rewrite of the first draft, when you start your second draft, you're kind of going to go through the same processes, except the dialogue is more precise. So it's like by the second draft, this is going to be your starting point for the second draft. So your second draft, as you're doing rewrites or writing a second draft, that'll be the dialogue. And then when you go through the rewrite or revision of the second draft, you're going to look at this and be like, can I improve on this? Can I say more than this? Sometimes it's going to be like, no, like I'd really like that. Or maybe you'll be like, I'm going to change this in the back. And the tedious aspect of it is, hopefully you can see this. You can, I know you can. It's just going to be like squishy. And this is the other part I was holding off on. Okay. Because as you go through each iteration of revision and rewrite through every new draft and a version of that draft, you're going to be very particular about the word choice. I see a stranger. Okay. Maybe by the third draft, you're like, you know what? I'm gonna take this out. I'm gonna just put in the mirror, I see a stranger. And you know what? I want something different than stranger. You know, maybe the daughter's really, really smart. She's like, I see an anomaly, you know? Again, like you see how we go from dumb to smart, from simple to poetic. And so it's like, that's sort of the thing, the tedious. Or you might be like, you know what? When I look in the mirror, I see a stranger. No, I'm going to keep that. So it's like, it becomes a tedious process of word choice. And again, strategic grammar. Maybe you're like, you know what? I like this. When I look in the mirror, I'm going to add a strategic comma right here, because I want, I resent you. When I look in the mirror, I see a stranger. And you could even, you know what? I'm gonna add some flair to this. I'm gonna underline this, because I want the pacing and the emphasis to be on I see a stranger. I resent you. When I look in the mirror, I see a stranger. You see that? You see how the original we went from point A to point B? That is the process. That is the real-time process of like writing dialogue, like writing good dialogue. And that's really what you're going to go through after that when you're on your first draft and you do that first revision and rewrite. Every iteration after that, every rewrite, every draft, you're going to do something of this. And it's a balancing act, because you don't want to have obviously, I think grammar is the big thing that like people don't utilize enough. Or people read dialogue and are fucking idiots and like, this is supposed to have a comma. It's like, this is dialogue. This is how people speaking. The grammar there is for what's the word I'm looking for? Presentation. It's not for technical reasons. We're not writing a formula. These are people talking. So if I wanted to put I, comma, resent, comma, you, comma, that could work. I resent you, period. Those commas are there strategically to emphasize a certain tone and flow and rhythm in the dialogue. It has to be rhythmic, okay? An idiot will be like, you can't put commas like that because fuck them, they're stupid, okay? So this is what you want to get to. This is how you get to it. But again, it's a tedious fucking process. You have to sit down and write at the end of the day. You can do the whiteboard stuff all you want, but you're going to have to follow the processes that I've kind of laid out already. Okay? So now Now you've done that, okay? So you've done, let's say, 2 drafts, 3 drafts. You've gone through, you've done all the dialogue, you've reached the point where you're like, I'm really loving this dialogue, okay? Now, what you're gonna do is you are going to, and I suggest doing this with a friend. Don't do so much like a table read, but do this with a friend. Have a friend be there. This is something fucking Quentin Tarantino does, and I don't give a shit if people are like, oh, don't like quit trying. I'm not trying to be like Tarantino. This is actually a really good thing that he does. And a lot of people do this, but read it out loud, but have a friend there. Because when you're reading it to a friend, reading it out loud by yourself is good, but having a friend there, somebody there that you can trust and that knows your intentions and can kind of understand your writing, it kind of just, it gives a lot more, it just gives that extra oomph that you need reading it out loud to where you can really feel the dialogue and hear it and textualize it. So when you do that, when you get to about a 3rd draft, right, and you're feeling really good, read it out loud with a friend. And this is the thing that I do. This is probably one time I say highly recommend printing it out. Okay, if you can print it out for free, great. If you got to chalk up the $10-15 to print out the 90-100 pages, fuck it, dude. It's a good investment. Have it there. Have your red pen or whatever pen you want. Don't do black. Do a red, a pink, a green, but something that stands out. But you want to read it out loud and you want to make it bleed. Like really every dialogue, I gotta like boom, make it bleed. Like change, like really you're basically kind of reverting back to that first draft. But now you're working with way more precision in the dialogue that as you see it, you could be like, oh, it needs to be said with more anger. Or like when I say this, it needs to be angry. I need to shout it. Like you're really going to make the page bleed in terms of that. You're going to add a soul to the notes. So the notes before were a little bit more pragmatic, like, oh, take this out, add this, keep that. This one you're going to be like, needs to be visceral. Like the character needs to say this viscerally. Slow it down, speed it up. It's going to be it's going to have that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pump that blood into the prose. Okay, so this is the part where I talked about like, we're waiting kind of to the end about the prose and the action, surrounding the dialogue. Now, a lot of people would be like, oh, you don't want to overwrite your thing, whatever. If you had a choice to overwrite or underwrite, overwriting's always the best choice, okay? Quit being fucking cowards and write. We are writers, that is the point. So, you can have, like, let's say an action line before Abby says this, right? This is good. It's like, how do I pump blood now into this? So, let's say before, it's like, let's take a look at that, right? So, I'm going to move this down. I'm going to put, oh my God, don't tell me that this is going. Okay. Give me a second. I actually think I know I have more. Yes, I do. Oops. That is not it. Give me 1 second. 120. Of course. Okay. Yeah, this thing is out. Good thing I bought more. I may keep this in here. So, sorry for the delay, but I'll kind of give a little bit of an update. I shot a short film, which was nice. Been in the editing process. It's a very fun little cosmic horror. It's based on like folklore, Japanese folklore, about a demon. So it's It's like a demon cosmic horror. I've been getting into that. The last short film I did, I'm pretty happy with. It could have been better and on my part in different aspects of like the screenwriting and the directing, but I did that short mainly for fun, and I understood that it wasn't gonna be perfect like the way I wanted it to, and I kind of just was like, well, the narrative isn't as perfect, and the dialogue, I know I can do better, but I can't really think of anything. But I just needed to do something because it had been a long time. And it was more of like an experimental kind of dusting off the cobwebs type thing for me. So, but this one that I did, the short film, I actually like it. We did a picture lock, which turned out entertaining. It was fun to watch as a picture lock. If you don't know what a picture lock is, it's like when all the picture editing is done, and you can send it off to the sound and the colorist. So usually the picture lock is like, okay, like it's great, and then the music and the sound and everything enhances it greatly. But even before that, I was like, wow, this is actually pretty good, even with no like real sound to it. So, but that's what it is. Yeah, it's a little update. Let's see. So this is. Let's see. Oh my god, that feels so good. Make it bleed. And pump that blood into this is an awful way of arranging this, but it's for your sake. Screenshot that. Okay? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ooh. Wow. It's a little bit more. Damn. It's a strong scent. Might get a little high after this. It's a joke. I haven't smoked crack since this morning. Okay. So let's look at that dialogue from Abby, right? So let's do Abby. And then it's I resent you. ... When I look in the mirror, comma, ooh, see this? You remember I see a stranger or whatever? I found something better. I see nothing. Okay? So we have that. Now, we have our little pros, like, let's say originally we had Abby looks at her mother. Let's say actually this. Let's say we had this at first. Abby looks at her mom, right? Cool. This is where we're going to add some blood to this. We're going to pump something. We're going to pump some fucking life into this thing. That'll be totally fine for a lot of people. Some, whatever. Now, we're going to beef it up. Abby glares at her mom. Right? Let's say this is like draft 2. Ooh, okay. Yeah. Now it's like she didn't just look, she glares at her. What's up, glares at her mom. Let's say draft 3. But she's sad, remember that? Abby. So let's say draft 3, we're like, okay, you know what? We're not gonna glare. Yeah, let's glare. Glares at her mother. Gives us a feeling of detachment. Mom, mother, you know? Now we're gonna pump blood. We're reading the script out loud. It's like Abby glares at her mother. I resent you. When I look in the mirror, I see nothing. You're like, you know what? God, there's something here that I could put. Glares at her mother. Eyes. Her blue eyes. Let's just say. Abby glares at her mother. Empty, vacant. Not a single tear. Not a single tear. I'm doing this in real time, so. But you see, this is kind of the process of writing. She glares at her mother. Vacant. If she could cry. She'd unleash an ocean. Obviously, this is very poetic, but you're getting the point. A tidal wave. We'll do a tidal wave. But nothing. No, let's not do that. But she remains bear with me. But she holds to spite her mother, or holds out of spite. See, these types of things, this type of stuff enhances, they go kind of in tandem. But you don't want to do this till the very end. Because when you do this a lot at the beginning, that's how you get to where you get stuck into like actually overwriting like a lot. Which again, I'd rather overwrite than underwrite. Like, I didn't fucking spend years developing my skills as a writer to just write Abby looks at her mom. Fuck that, dude. And not only that, a lot of actors are gonna love shit like this because this just adds more and more layers to the scene, and actors want to fucking perform. Oh, Abby looks at her mom. Thanks. Okay, like, I'll look. But when you give an actress this, Abby glares at her mother. Vacant. If she could cry, she'd unleash a tidal wave, but she holds out of spite. I resent you. When I look in the mirror, I see nothing. Like, bro, like what the like? That's actually pretty damn good. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. So that is something that you want to get to. And we got to there from Mom, I hate you because you make me live vicariously through you. It makes me sad. And when I don't have an identity because of it, and I resent you. That was essentially the dialogue that we had. So we went from that to I resent you. When I look in the mirror, I see nothing. And then at the very end, when we read it out loud with our friend, we decided like we're gonna make this bleed. We're gonna pump blood into it. Now, of course, you're not gonna have this before every bit of dialogue. I think we know that. But at critical moments and at strategic moments, stuff like this makes a huge difference. You want it sprinkled in. You want it sprinkled in throughout the script. Because when you get moments like this, and you early on in the script, when you have moments like this, a couple of these, and then several pages down, you have another one, 10 pages down, you have another thing, or even before that, when you sprinkle it throughout, it overall enhances the development. It adds more to the character, and especially if you had, let's say, 2 or 3 moments like this prior to certain things Abby says, whether it's to her mom, her friend, or a lover that she's involved with. When you get to this towards like this critical moment in the script, it's like you've had just a weight of 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 um like a, you feel the weight of the soul of the character, and it just hits a lot harder. And this is like the very very last thing you're going to be doing to the script, and it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. From Abby looks at her mom, I resent you, I resent you, when I look in the mirror I see nothing, to Abby glares at her mother. The actor has a direction. Vacant, so the actor knows, like, I'm vacant, like I'm empty right now. If she could cry, she'd unleash a tidal whip, but she holds out of spite. I mean, you could say, like, if she could, she wants to cry, but she holds out of spite. If you want to, like, scale it back a little bit, you can totally do that. But the sentiment still remains. It has its poetry. It's had its soul. So it's like, when the actor reads this, when the director reads this, like, I know exactly how to direct this person. Like, you don't have to direct. Like, the director won't, just read the script. It's there. And it's like the actor can sit glaring at their mother vacant, and it's like holding back those tears. But I want to cry, but I'm going to hold it back because I'm going to fucking spite you. And then I'm going to say this to you. And it's like, just in that little, you've created a punching moment. Now, of course, when you're asking yourself, like, what about dialogue that's not super heavy, that's a little more plot driven or a little bit more direct? You just keep it simple. Like, you can still, so like if you're doing a dialogue on the opposite side of the spectrum, let's say, this is where the balance comes in. Let's say Abby says, like, I'm a fan, or I love De Palma, Brian De Palma, the actor, the fucking director. Sorry. I love De Palma. Let's watch that one. So let's say they're like, she and a friend, or she's on a date with somebody, and they go to like an old classic movie theater, and they have a bunch of old classic films playing, and they're just looking, and she's like, oh, I love De Palma. Let's go watch Blowout. Blowout's one of his movies. Let's watch Blowout. Simple line. It's like, it again goes back. It reveals a character thing about her. We have a dialogue where we learn something about, she has a love for certain cinema. Even wanting to watch that kind of movie can tell you, like, what kind of what her view is of the world and why she connects with it. So you have something simple like that. You're thinking, like, okay, well, can I still write something poetic leading to that? And in a way you can. It's like, she gazes at the marquee, her face lights up, her eyes light up. Boom. Looks up, her eyes light up, she sees something she likes. I love De Palma. Let's watch Blowout. So that's kind of how you do that. See, it's not, in other ways that people would do that would be like, they would put, like, she looks up at the movie's showing. That's how a lot of people would probably write that. And she would say, I love De Palma, let's watch Blowout. Other people might be a little bit more micromanaging. She looks up at the showings and she scans till she sees De Palma, Blowout starting at 7:30. People do that. But this was more, to me, it's just a more flowy. It's like, it tells more of a story, especially like her eyes light up. Like, she has an actual physical reaction to it. She doesn't just look, oh, I see De Palma, I love De Palma. It's like, no, it's like, oh, and as a reader, you're like, oh, what does she see? And like that's how you kind of continue to engage your reader. She gazes up at the marquee, her eyes light up. I love De Palma. That's why she lit up. And because she lit up, it's like we know like she has a deep affection for that, for Brian De Palma. So that's like another way. That's how you would do the rest of your like not majority, but for like a large bulk of how the dialogue's going to be, because a lot of dialogue is going to be a lot more. I don't want to say simplistic, but just a more digestible. It's just going to be more digestible. It's going to be not as heavy as what we showed beforehand. So that's kind of like the rhythm you want to follow. Like you can, again, like she looks up, but like, okay, what am I really conveying here in this thing? Like she has a deep affection for De Palma. So how can I write that she has a deep affection without saying she has a deep affection? And this is how you do it. And again, it's like I know this is easier said than done, but I think under like seeing these steps now and how you can like the way to actually apply and get from like bad dialogue to good dialogue that feels and sounds right. I think now it's like a lot of you, I really believe you can sit down and start getting and feel like you know what you're doing. Because that's the main point, is like you have to feel like you know what you're doing, what the next steps are, and that you can get from point A to point Z, as long as if you follow this sort of plan. I want you to feel that confident. Okay. So now that you've done all that, the last thing you're gonna do, once you've hit the stage where you've added you've pumped some blood into it, you already got your dialogue all figured out. Again, let's say that the first draft, she didn't say, I love De Palma, let's watch blah. She could have said something completely different, but we ended up settling on that. Or not settling, but we ended up finding ourselves here. So at that point, what you are going to do, and this is like the boring thing, kind of, is you're going to do your final Now, one thing I want everybody to realize is I haven't said you've done a table read. I haven't said you've sent this out to anybody. So this is all happening before you do like a table read, or before you send it out to like a producer and be like, this is a script I wrote. This is what I want to try to make this, or anything. So you're getting like, this is essentially like you've reached the final draft and you're ready to like really take the next step to like try to get this to get you into a meeting of some sort, whether for this script or whatever. So your final pass is very simple. It's going to be boring. Spelling. It's dialogue, so grammatically speaking, you don't have to necessarily be correct, but you want to make sure the grammar is consistent. So, consistent. I'm going to put quotations, grammar. Now, another thing is check character tags. Because sometimes when you're doing a lot of editing, it'll say like Abby, and then the next character who is speaking, it'll say Abby again. So it'll like double up. So you want to make sure, you want to check the character tags there. Okay. The other thing, spelling, the consistent grammar that the characters use, it's consistent. Check the character tags. Tidy up prose. So all the prose that we just literally just talked about, those grammatically, make sure they're as consistent grammatically as possible. There's also, I know there's a spell check tool for all the software, so that should be relatively easy, but it doesn't catch things that are spelled correctly but wrong. So it's like if you use the wrong there, I've done it before. I know the difference between there, and there, but sometimes you're typing so fast, it just, whatever. It doesn't really catch it sometimes. So tidy up the prose. And then the other thing too is I call it I'll call it blemishes. So sometimes when you're writing a script with the formatting, it'll be like there'll be like it'll you'll have like a double like you'll have a prose or a paragraph or an action, and then it'll skip a line because of whatever reason, or dialogue will be kind of like out of format. A lot of it's formatting. There'll be like a double period. You'll put like two. There'll be like two periods or whatever, stuff like that. So you want to kind of blemish that, and if you possible, send it to a friend who can check all these things. They're not really reading it to read it. Preferably the friend you read it out loud to, and of course also the friend will kind of they'll naturally give you feedback and notes that are helpful of things you can do with the dialogue wise. And also kind of help with dialogue and pertaining to plot and all of that. So do that final thing. Once you finally do that, just I don't know how to say it because you're kind of doing this already, but basically make sure that the formatting and everything looks nice just when you look at it. Like not even when you're reading it, like the exterior, like the scene bullet, the scene headers all look nice. You know, if there's like any type of like big blocks of prose, of action, maybe you can split that into two blocks so it doesn't look so daunting. And a lot of times, sometimes it should be broken up into maybe two or three different paragraphs, and just make it look very nice and presentable. You know, I always like it should look like art. You know, like pleasing. So do that, and at that point, you've done everything you can to do the best dialogue that your skill set is allowing you to do at that time. And again, as you continue to work and write scripts, you're going to get better at dialogue. You're going to become more refined at it. And yeah, I mean, that's essentially as much as I can tell you. That's as much as I can tell you and help you and teach you with making dialogue, with writing dialogue in a screenplay. The only way you can learn more and figure the things out that you probably still have questions about is by doing. That's really the only way at this point. Obviously, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. You could, again, Instagram is Lowriders, TikTok is Lowriders. You can email through the website if you like, or leave a comment here. More than happy to answer and add some more context and clarify some things and all of that. So that was a good one though. It's like over an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. So that's good. Thank you. And eventually, you know, probably next month I'll have another workshop up on here, figuring out what the best one is to do for that. So thank you all, and hopefully I didn't bore you.